Hi everyone. Welcome back to Julia's story. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. Wind combed the rooftop and lifted every laugh into the dark like it wanted to show the stars how rich people sound. I carried canapes in a dress I stitched myself, black and neat, seemed strong enough to hold when hands got careless. Glass walls flashed with river light. Cameras hovered like moths that learned to purr. Rowan Pike saw me first. He leaned on the rail, all ice and grin, the kind of man who makes trouble look curated. Beside him, Cashin Ward held a tumbler and an expression that could buy a sunrise and ask for change. Vivian Hale, the legend in white silk, floated 2 tables away, talking with her jewelry, smiling in a language that does not need verbs. I kept moving because rent listens when I walk. Rowan lifted his glass in my direction. Bet you cannot make her trend, he said to Cashin. Before sunrise. Marry the biggest curve in the room and call it love. My tray paused an inch. My face did not. I have a degree in pretending all walls are windows to kinder places. Cashin followed Rowan's eyes and found me. His stare was not cruel. It was curious in the way of men who have never been told no by an elevator. He crossed the deck with that unbothered stride money teaches, stopping in front of me with a smile that had 1 truth and 3 edits. "What is your name?" he asked. "Raina," I said. He looked at my hands, my shoulders, the outline of me I have learned to carry like an anthem. He looked back up. "Raina," he said, "I am about to do a foolish thing. Do you want to be paid for it, or do you want to be the author?" Rowan laughed behind him. Vivian tilted her head just enough for the room to tilt with it. I set the tray on a passing cart and stood easy so no one would see my knees decide to be brave. "Terms," I said. His smile sharpened. "We sign tonight. Your name does not vanish. Your body is not a headline unless you write it. You keep your work. You keep your keys. You keep your aunt's shop if that is yours to keep. I do not touch your accounts. I wire a number with 4 commas because time is not free. We take 1 photo. We leave the party before it learns to bite. I have a seam ripper in my pocket that remembers every dress I saved from disaster. I felt the weight of it and the weight of the room and the steady drum of my own blood saying this is a door. I looked at Cashin Ward and saw not a prince, a hinge. "Yes," I said. His eyes flickered like a man surprised his plan did not have to beg. Rowan raised his glass higher. Someone whistled with the wrong mouth. A harp started a hopeful chord that no one paid for. We did not kiss on the roof. We made a plan. A car waited with a driver who knew that speed is a kind of discretion. The courthouse at night smelled like paper and tired jokes. The clerk on duty wore a cardigan and the faith of a woman who has seen every version of love and still believes pens are holy. "Names, please," she said. "Raina Solis," I said. "Steady." "Cashin Ward," he said, and slid his card across the counter without blinking at the fee. We signed where the lines wanted us. My hand shook once. I told it to behave, and it did. The judge pronounced us with a stamp that sounded like a door closing on something that needed to stay out in the rain. Cashin lifted my left hand with care and slid a ring onto my finger that felt like a story I would not let the city tell without me. The clerk offered a photo. I said no. Rowan said obviously. The flash cut us into a version of ourselves that would travel farther than sleep. When we stepped back into the night, the city had drawn itself tighter. The wind tasted like metal and promise. Cashin stood beside me by the courthouse steps, not touching, not orchestrating. He looked at my face with an attention that had nothing to do with a dare. "I am not a good man yet," he said quietly. "I am trying to outrun the parts of me that think money is a personality." "Be faster," I said. A black car carried us back to the roof where the party had thickened and learned a new rumor. Vivian waited at the edge of the deck like a lighthouse built by a woman who charges admission. She saw the ring. She did not blink. She turned her face toward the nearest phone and gave it a smile it had no right to keep. "Congratulations," she said when we passed, voice soft, edges hard. She let her gaze travel over my dress as if she were deciding where to put her knife and whether to call it kindness. Rowan tapped a spoon to a flute and called for eyes. The crowd obeyed the way trained dogs do. Cashin's jaw tightened. He lifted my hand because optics are a leash, and tonight I agreed to wear one for cash and control. He did not squeeze. He held. "To the bride," Rowan sang. "To the bet we will call destiny in the morning." His grin was a blade pretending to be sunlight. The deck made the noise rich people make when they smell a story they can afford. Phones rose. The harpist found a chord that belonged at a better wedding. The city pressed its face to the glass. I felt Aunt Lila at my back, even though she was miles away with her kettle and her sharp mouth. "Dignity first, baby," her voice would say. But Dignity has a cousin named Rent, and she does not apologize for knocking loud. The first flash went off from the mezzanine. Then another. Someone near the bar whispered that I was brave or crazy, maybe both. Vivian drifted closer with a smile that wanted a close-up. Rowan angled himself into the shot because greed hates empty space. Cashin turned slightly so the frame centered me, not him. That detail did not fix anything. It wrote a note for later. A server brushed my arm in passing, eyes bright. "You okay?" she mouthed. I nodded for both of us. Cashin raised the mic. He looked like a man already arguing with his reflection. "To a woman who did not ask for glitter," he said, and stopped himself from making it worse. He set the mic down instead. Small mercy that tasted like restraint. My phone buzzed in the pocket I had stitched into my dress because women who sew for a living know better than to trust any purse. Unknown number. No greeting. A single word in a font I could have cut with my seam ripper. Bet. A second buzz. A thumbnail appeared under it. The rooftop from an hour ago. Rowan's mouth at Cashin's ear. The shape of my body framed in their line of sight. The caption ready to travel like a disease. Vivian's perfume moved the air. Rowan's grin sharpened. Cashin's eyes tracked mine and landed on the screen I did not raise. He felt the temperature drop without seeing the ice. I slipped the phone back into the pocket where stitches hold like promises. I smiled for a camera that thinks it owns me and let it take a version it will not get to keep. The harp changed key. The wind leaned in. The glass reflected a woman I recognized and a man who would have to learn new verbs if he wanted to stay. Then, from the mezzanine, a lens hummed alive, and the live counter next to it jumped from 3 to 300 faster than anyone could pretend not to notice. The angle widened. The caption climbed the frame. Watch the dare become a wedding. Morning peels the night off the city like tape off skin. Cashin's driver drops us at the tower that thinks it invented being tall. The lobby smells like lemon and apology. The elevator climbs with the hush of money keeping secrets and opens to a penthouse full of echo and glass. It is the kind of place where even the bowls look like they cost a childhood. Cashin walks me through rooms like a tour guide who knows the exhibits might flee. Kitchen made of stone and angles. Living room that performs being lived in. A terrace staring down at a river that has carried better stories than ours. He points out a closet for my things and a drawer for my keys as if territory is tenderness. He orders coffee and turns off the music because silence is his only brave habit. There is a pause where a different couple might kiss. We do not perform. We practice breathing. He says we will make a plan before the internet does. Press at noon, charity office at 2, market walk at 4 for peaches with our chins tucked. He offers to hire a stylist. I tell him my aunt can hem a cloud in under an hour. His mouth learns an almost smile and then forgets it. A house manager arrives, lists drawers, assigns towels, says welcome in a tone meant for new furniture. I ask where the nearest bus stop is. She blinks like I told a joke badly. By 10, a publicist wheels in a rack of dresses with a smile that could sell water to a river. She fits me in a cream coat and clicks her tongue at my heels. We step outside and the northern light decides it likes my cheekbones. Cashin takes my elbow without owning it. Cameras blink from behind potted plants, polite as wolves in bow ties. People in the market pretend not to see us and fail. The peaches behave. Cashin buys two and pays like it is an apology for everything not peach. He asks if I will keep working. I tell him sweat is a language that does not need translation. He nods to say he heard and then does not know where to put that information. Vivian appears on the crosswalk as if the city were her stage and the traffic lights her cues. White silk, gold chain, a face that forgives nothing. She stops 1 meter from us and aims her smile like a camera. "Congratulations, Reina," she says, and she hits the vowels of my name hard like they are disobedient. It lands, soft and sharp. She kisses the air near Cashin's cheek and leaves the scent of victory she has rented for years. Publicly, she is gracious. Privately, she is an alarm only certain men can hear. Her eyes skim my coat, measure the fit, calculate which blogs will caption which photos with which poison. Then she turns to the nearest lens and gives it the angle it always pays for. The rest of the afternoon is a museum of gestures. We hand a check to a charity receptionist framed in tasteful gray. We sign a wall that will be repainted next quarter. We pass a school where girls stare from the gate with expressions that know how the world prices bodies and still want joy. One of them whispers my name to test if it tastes like power or pity. I look at her and try to give her the first thing the city ever gave me for free. Eye contact that admits we are both real. By evening, the coats and the cameras have had their fill. I take the train to Aunt Lila's shop because rooms with marble make me forget my weight can be an instrument and not a flaw. The shop smells like steam and pins and truth. The sewing machines are asleep. The small fridge hums like a pet dreaming. Aunt Lila sits under the window with her reading glasses at the tip of her nose and a needle already threaded in the color of defiance. She looks up, takes in the ring, the coat, the tired. She gets up and hugs me with the force of a conclusion she does not need proof for. "Dignity first," she says into my hair. "Then rent. You can have both if you keep your mouth clean and your hands working." I take off the coat and hang it on the chair that used to hold prom disasters. I slip into a black wrap dress that forgives and flatters on the same beat. I check the mic in my bag, the one I use after midnight when the city lets me sing and forgets to judge the silhouette that produces the sound. I swallow nerves. I tell Aunt Lila I will be back by 2. She tells me to bring bread. The club is 3 blocks down and 1 world over. A red door, a wobbly stage, a bartender who knows how to look away when the song needs privacy. The regulars clap for me with hands that have cleaned other people's offices. I sing the kind of songs that do not ask permission. The room breathes in time. Someone films with tenderness instead of thirst. For 4 minutes, I am not the joke from a rooftop. I am the throat that survived. Between sets, my phone swells with messages. A clip of the courthouse has been cut into 4 jokes and a hymn. Comments say brave and say trained and say both with teeth. I let the screen dim. A woman in the back wipes tears and does not apologize. I give her a nod like a receipt. At 1:15, I walk back to the shop with my coat open and my heart still conducting. The city at this hour lets you pass without taxing your spirit. A bus sighs. A couple fights softly about groceries and then laughs into their own wind. I turn the corner and see the shop window glowing like a lighthouse that knows the shore is only sometimes kind. Inside, Aunt Lila has left a loaf of bread on the counter and a note that reads "Sleep here if the tower starts to talk like a man." I kiss the note and lock the door. By 2, the tower's elevator spits me into Cashin's echo. The penthouse is dark except for a lamp that thinks it is elegant. On the table, A bowl of limes has been replaced by white roses that smell like somebody learned laundering. I set my bag down. The air tastes off. Not wrong yet, just edited. Cashin steps out of the office, and the fact of him makes the room recalibrate. Shirt sleeves, tired shoulders, eyes like a report he has not decided to file. He looks at me the way a shoreline looks at weather. I ask if he listened to the set. He says he tried. He says the mic on his phone did not do my voice justice. For a second, it almost feels like we invented a small piece. Then the elevator sighs and delivers a sound the apartment has already learned to mimic. Heels. Quiet, expensive, unaware that floors have ears. The door opens on a slice of white silk and a shape the city would follow into a fire for content. Vivian steps in like she forgot what doors are for. She smiles at both of us like she practices in mirrors that believe in her. I was in the neighborhood, she says. We need to discuss the board's patience and your tendency to feed the wrong gods. Her eyes obey Cashin first and then rest on me like a cat choosing a warm spot that does not get to object. Cashin does not ask how she still has a key. He does not tell me why she uses it like prayer. He says it is late. She says late is when truth stops shaking. They argue in the tone rich people call civil. The content is a fistfight behind glass. I walk to the kitchen and fix water because thirst is not a drama I intend to perform. I hear my name spoken like a weather pattern and pretend the syllables are elsewhere. Vivian's perfume colonizes the room. The white roses agree. When she leaves a temperature. Cashin stands at the window and does not touch the glass, as if the city would sting. He says he will sleep in the other room so I can breathe. He says the door will be open if the night grows teeth. He says good night like a man and used to saying it to anyone who might not stay. When I am alone, the apartment stops pretending it is kind. Air vents whisper. Marble hums an old warning. My phone throbs once in my pocket. Unknown sender again. A small white square blooms on the screen like a flower whose petals are made of teeth. No text. Only a photo. A hallway I do not recognize. Gray carpet. Brass numbers. A shoulder I do. Cashin's. A laugh I have not learned to mistake. Vivian's. The angle is wrong, like a secret filmed by a mirror that loves scandal. The timestamp is precise and unkind. The file name ends in the word river. I tuck the phone back into my pocket because hands should not shake when they are holding proof. I walk to the terrace and open the door to cold. The river breathes like a patient. The city growls like a machine with a fever. When I turn back, a white envelope sits on the floor inside the threshold as if the apartment birthed it. No knock. No footsteps. Bone white paper with my name in neat ink. One word typed in the corner where a brand would put its logo. Bet. I pick it up. It weighs more than an envelope should. And from the hallway, as if the building itself wanted to finish the sentence, a soft laugh drifts toward my door, followed by the quick hush of a camera learning to go live. The envelope's flap tore with a sigh that felt practiced. Inside, a folder in bone white, edges sharp like it wanted to be a blade. I slid the pages out on the kitchen island, and the roses watched like accomplices. First sheet. Blue bubbles and gray bubbles printed like a confession that learned fonts. Rowan's dare in clean text. Bet her. Make the big girl trend before sunrise. Price it right. A wire memo that read like a joke written by a coward. Cashin's replies colder than the marble under my hands. Keep it tidy. One photo. No mess. A transfer receipt with 4 commas and a note that pretended to be philanthropy. You cannot disinfect cruelty with decimals. Second sheet. A schedule in tidy rows. River deck. 10 for pre-light. 10:50 remarks. 11 on the dot. Gesture of unity. The words were pretty enough to sell to a child. A smaller line hid under the time like an insect that knows to travel by shadow. Capture. Hold 3 beats. Third sheet. 2 clauses side by side. On the left, a paragraph in French that kept its teeth. Any public act of affection may be deemed mutual consent to convert the agreement into partnership for governance. Proof may include images and broadcast. On the right, the same idea rinsed until it smelled like sugar. A gesture of unity signals stability. The differences wore a suit, but they did not fool the part of me that earns rent with needles and eyes. My phone buzzed. Unknown sender again. The thumbnail opened before I could pretend to refuse. A hallway lined in gray carpet. Brass numbers shining like they wanted credit. Cashin's shoulder in profile. Vivian's laugh like a polished weapon. A keycard's red wink. Door open. The timestamp sat in the corner like a witness with perfect memory. 2 nights ago. Not last winter. Not rumor with dust. Heat rose in my neck and refused to leave. I turned the water on and rinsed my hands because motion is a spell. The roses smelled like laundering. The seam ripper in my pocket had the weight of a small oath. The door clicked. Cashin's steps crossed the echo and stopped when he saw the folder. He looked at the papers and then at me the way a shoreline looks at fire. A muscle flickered in his jaw and obeyed. "This is old," he said. I did not believe him, and he heard it land. I lifted the schedule and let the ink do the speaking. River. 11. He reached for the page and stopped short when he realized the proof would burn skin. He set both hands flat on the island and lowered his voice until even the marble leaned to hear. "I was stupid enough to say yes when a man I trust wanted a show," he said. "I am not stupid enough to stake my future on a kiss planned like a robbery." We stood in silence, built by men who taught rooms to adore their voices. It felt like not drowning yet. He looked at the clause in French and paled by a shade no camera would catch. He read the English and understood why the city never forgives a translation that deletes the teeth. "I will kill this," he said. "Tonight. Promises are cheap until you buy them with something that bleeds." I folded the papers, slid them back into the folder, and took the ring on my finger like a question that wanted a better verb. "I am going to the shop," I said. Aunt Lila opened the back door before I knocked. She saw my face and did not ask. She cleared the machine table with one sweep, dropped a bolt of red satin like a flag, and threaded a needle with hands that have saved brides from bad decisions and hems from storm drains. We cut on the bias so the fabric would remember how to forgive. She pinned with the speed of a woman who has stitched through every hour that breaks people. We built a bodice that borrowed power without begging. We laid the skirt in panels that moved like fire when air owed you respect. She turned the garment inside out and added a pocket along the left seam, invisible from outside, strong enough to carry paper and a breath. "For the receipts," she said. "For your hand if your knees forget you are steel." I slid the folder into the pocket and felt the weight settle against my thigh like a second pulse. Aunt Lila set the dress on the form and stepped back with the gravity of a judge who actually likes the truth. "You will not go down there to be eaten," she said. "You will go to set a table and tell the room to eat its own lies." I changed in the small bathroom where prom girls have cried and women have removed evidence of the day from under their eyes. The red found my skin and did not apologize. Aunt Lila pinned the last inch so my breathing could be bold. She set a tiny tin on the counter with a brush, a liner, and a lipstick the color of the last safe door. "No glitter," she said. "Only light." My phone vibrated. Vivian. No words. A link to a camera test on the river deck. The frame for the lectern. The angle where the city would be asked to clap on command. The teleprompter screen was caught in the reflection of a panel and blinked its first lines like a flirt. "Thank you for believing in us. Merci de croire en notre histoire. Gracias por creer en nuestra historia." Then the line below, smaller, clinical, merciless. "Kiss now. Hold 3 beats." Another text. "Rowan. Bring your best face. The city is hungry and loves to be fed." Aunt Lila saw my hands and pressed a finger to my wrist where the pulse was still arguing with itself. "Eat something," she said, and when I could not, she tore a heel from the loaf and put it into my palm like medicine. I chewed. It helped. At 9:20, Cashin's car waited by the curb like a confession that could not shape sentences. He stood outside the back door of the shop in a dark suit that stopped pretending to be power. He looked at the red and then at my eyes. He did not reach for me. He reached for the handle of the car door and held it open like a man who has learned to serve without calling it charity. "Do not speak for me," I said as I slid in. He nodded. Then he surprised me. "Do not speak for me either," he said. "Speak for yourself. I will stand where the camera can see me paying attention." The drive to the river was a straight line even though the streets tried to bend. The city's breath fogged the glass and wiped it clear. We passed the courthouse steps that know the weight of stamps. We passed the market where peaches sell the idea of summer to tired hands. We passed a girl in a school jacket looking up at a billboard version of Vivian that did not contain a single truth and still captivated the sky. The backstage corridor smelled like lemons and power. A comms girl with a tablet and trembling bravery checked the schedule and looked at me like I was either a grenade or the patron saint of women tired of being softened. She led us past a hedge of ferns that hid a camera with a red light ready to judge, past a tech rubbing a cable like prayer beads, past a bar where ice rehearsed for applause. The teleprompter glowed in sleep mode. When the tech tapped his board, it woke and scrolled the script that thought it could tame us. "Thank you for believing in us. Kiss now. Hold 3 beats." The producer's voice reached us from the wings, smooth and sure. 2 minutes. Warm the crowd. Remember the kiss lands on 1. He did not need to say the rest. The clip would be cut in the truck and fed to a street that prefers tidy lies. I slid a hand along the seam and felt the edge of the folder like a spine under skin. I could hear Aunt Lila in the hum of the lights. "Translate with your feet if your mouth is not given the mic." Cashin stood 1 pace back, aligned to my breath without trying to steer it. He exhaled. I did too. The red light on the lens sharpened. The comms girl raised her hand. 3, 2. A laugh drifted in from the corridor, bright and practiced. The angle of a phone came around the door like a knife wearing lipstick. The live counter jumped with a greed that tasted like battery. I stepped toward the lectern, and the prompter slid to the line that wanted to own me. "Kiss now. Hold 3 beats." The prompter breathed its command like a prayer somebody sold wholesale. "Thank you for believing in us. Kiss now. Hold 3 beats." The lens blinked red. The city leaned in with greasy appetite. I set both palms on the lectern so it could feel my pulse. The mic fed me a hiss, then a heartbeat of silence. The producer's hand circled in the wings, the motion you use on horses and women when you think they can be trained. "No," I said. It was not loud. It landed anyway. Sound folds in rooms like this, then stands up straighter when it recognizes a spine. Sugar script scrolled again, trying to drown me in gratitude I had not agreed to. I pressed the sleep button on the prompter remote and watched flattery dim like a liar at last call. A rustle moved across the river deck, that soft animal noise of rich people deciding whether courage counts as entertainment. English first, clean and slow. A rumor is not a signal. A kiss is not consent. You will not move a vote with my mouth. I felt Cashin still 1 pace behind my right shoulder. Not steering. Not hiding. Present like a wall that refuses to lean. The comms girl glanced at him, then at me, then at the cables thriving under her feet like vines that learned law. French next. Un rumeur n'est pas un signal. Un baiser ne quitte pas le consentement. The vowels carried like oil in firelight. Spanish after, true as bread. Un rumor no es una señal. Un beso no compra consentimiento. Theo's laugh knifed from the side of the stage. He made the cut gesture to the tech with a smile that pretended to be a favor. The screen flickered. The mic popped. Dead. Good, I said to the silence, and spoke to the room like it was my kitchen. You wrote 2 versions of the same truth. One with teeth. One with perfume. Tonight you expected the perfume to do murder. Phones rose like a forest. Some hands shook. Some steadied. A woman in gold lowered her lens and listened with both ears, the rarest trick. I slid my hand along the seam of the red dress and felt the hard edge of the folder Aunt Lila had sewn into my life. The little hotel knife the security lead had left on the rail earlier lay warm as a promise. I bit the thread with my teeth and split the pocket open as neat as a seamstress saving a bride. The front row gasped. Craft loves an audience. The envelope came out bone white, stamped by sharp hands. I held it up, not as a flag, as a receipt. Inside is why they need the kiss, I said. Inside is the clause that calls a picture consent. Left column in French where honesty has teeth. Right column in English where the harm wears better clothes. The junior assistant with the headset saw me look his way. Brave eyes found a cable and a port and turned the dead screen into a window. 2 columns bloomed behind me, side by side, verbs unclothed. On the left, any public act of affection may be deemed mutual consent. Proof may include images and broadcast. On the right, a gesture of unity signals stability. No proof. No consent. Only perfume. The deck inhaled like an animal punched in the ribs. Theo's smile thinned and showed the years he had spent mistaking charm for math. Vivian stepped into frame with the unhurried grace of a woman stealing a throne. She placed one finger on the lectern where mine had rested and murmured into the air, so microphones would pretend she had blessed the room. We all need grace tonight. I leaned around the mic that no longer worked and gave the city the only grace it had earned. The next rule is small. No more kisses for cameras pretending to be courts. Security moved. The producer barked cut power from somewhere near the ferns. The tech's hand hovered over the switch and trembled, then dropped. The screen dimmed to a ghost. The crowd's phones brightened like 1,000 tiny suns that refused to ask permission. I turned from the stage and found the ensemble behind the curtain practicing concern. The comms girl's lips moved around the word sorry like it had bones. A catering worker steadied a tower of flutes with the shoulders of an athlete. A busboy I recognized from earlier pointed with his chin at a service door cracked like a secret. He did not say run. He did not have to. Theo stepped to block the gap, mouth friendly, eyes wrong. You made your point, he said. Now let us clean this for the market. He lifted a hand toward my elbow as if to shepherd me back into a script. I shifted and his fingers closed on air, the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. A guard in black reached for me with professional gentleness. I put the envelope against my ribs and looked him in the face until his training remembered his mother and he let his hand fall. Cashin breathed once. When he spoke, he aimed at the dark and the phones and the habit he needed to break. Kill the clause, he said. Tonight. Both languages. No edits. Theo laughed hard enough to show the hinge of his jaw. He waved a card at the tech like a priest blessing a fuse. The lights over the deck blinked twice and went black. The river became a mouth. The crowd became teeth. A hand closed around my wrist. Not rough. Urgent. The junior assistant. This way, he whispered. His headset dangled like a broken halo. We dove through the door into the service corridor where air smells like lemons and knives tell the truth. The hallway tightened around us, hot and bright, dishwashers singing, line cooks shouting corner, steam throwing halos at nobody. I ran, red dress swallowing light, envelope thudding my thigh like a second heart. The junior assistant peeled off toward the power room with a look I will owe him for a long time. Behind me, footsteps found the corridor's rhythm. Not panicked. Familiar. I glanced back. Vivian, heels precise, smile gone, eyes honest for the first time tonight. She kept pace at my shoulder like a rival who respects the work. "You will not survive their edit," she said, low. "Go live somewhere they cannot cut you." I burst through the rear door into alley air that tasted like coins and rain. A car idled where the shadow spared it. The driver leaned across and popped the lock. Cashin's voice carried from the doorway behind me without demanding ownership. "I will meet you at the shop." I slid into the seat, red spilling across leather, envelope hot under my palm. The driver punched the gas and the alley blurred into street. Sirens braided with links in the night above us. My phone vibrated, a stream key from a handle that had once only sent kindness after midnight. The city wanted a kiss. I fed it a signal. The counter lit like a fuse. And as the feed connected, a shadow stepped off the curb in front of us, calm as a man crossing his own living room, arm raised, palm out, a small rectangle glowing between his fingers. A live phone aimed at my windshield. A smile I knew like a cut that never quite healed. "Rowan." Rowan smiled into my headlights like a man who believes traffic laws are for people with smaller names. The live counter on his phone jumped. "Hungry." The driver swore once, clean and quiet, and tapped the horn. Rowan did not blink. He lifted his free hand and drew a small circle in the air like he was winding a toy. I lowered my window enough for the night to touch my teeth. "Move," I said. "Say the word," he purred. "Tell the city you are grateful. Kiss the camera instead of the man. We tidy the mess, the market purrs, your aunt gets a new roof." He leaned closer. "Be smart, Raina." A shape stepped out of the alley behind us and cut through the beam of my rear light. The junior assistant. Jacket askew, headset gone, eyes steady. He planted himself in Rowan's frame without touching him and lifted both palms like a crossing guard for decency. "Not tonight," he told Rowan, voice low. "The shop first." Rowan's smile went thin. He tapped the glass with a knuckle as gentle as a warning. "The city is watching," he said. Then he slid aside with the elegance of a man who never intends to carry his own consequence. The driver shot forward. The car swallowed 3 streets and spit us at the curb outside Aunt Lila's door. The shop glowed like a stubborn lantern. The bell over the frame gave one tidy cry when I pushed through. Heat. Steam. Thread. The hum of the small fridge that keeps sugar and mercy cold. Aunt Lila did not ask why I was wearing a river on my hem. She pushed a stool with her foot, set a chipped cup by the mirror, and handed me a towel like a shield. "Translate with your hands," she said. "Talk later. Work now." I propped my phone on a jar of combs and hit the stream because the corridor behind my back had already learned to lie. The counter woke, curious and quick. I gave the lens the one rule the night had earned. No filters. No fake angles. If you want a face you can sell, go somewhere else. If you want the truth that keeps you alive, sit. First to sit was a nurse in sneakers and a braid that had lost the argument with a double shift. She said she wanted rest, not glam. I pressed cream where the skin wanted mercy and lifted the shadows beneath her gaze the way we lift a fallen hem. Next was a mother who had fixed everyone but herself all week. We made room on her mouth for a smile to arrive when it felt like it. Then a girl in a thrifted blazer who asked to look like her voice when she sings alone, not like a cousin of a trending face. I drew her a line that led attention to the music, not the makeup. The chat hopped ugly and then learned manners. Noor, who lives online the way saints live in chapels, pinned a sentence that turned trolls into background noise. Beauty that tells the truth is not plain. It is specific. A mod team I did not know I had smothered the worst comments like they were small kitchen fires. The counter sprinted. The city brought its own light. The door opened and a woman in a gold coat stepped in like she had forgotten how to be allowed anywhere. She asked if we had time for a hem that would keep her from tripping on the stairs at work. Aunt Lila knelt with pins in her mouth and made the cloth remember who owned it. The woman watched in the mirror and did not cry because some miracles request privacy. A shadow filled the doorway, tall and hesitant. Cashin. No coat. No entourage. His hands were empty in a way that mattered. He did not reach for me. He fetched water, because thirst is a thief, and he handed cups with the calm of a man trying to stack a new habit where an old sin used to live. The chat split into prayers and curses and advice. He kept his eyes on the women in the chairs. Rowan's face tried to join as a split screen, all sugar and 90s charm. Declined. Then his lawyer arrived in the flesh, jacket dry while the rest of the city was wet, folder flat, smile winter. He announced a clause I had already read to filth and waved a paper that said words he hoped I feared. "You are in breach," he told the room, voice pitched for microphones we did not own. "You will end this stream, surrender the device, and report to the river deck like a good story." Aunt Lila placed her broom across the doorway with a motion she must have rehearsed for the day the world tries to come for her girls. She did not touch him. She raised a brow. The lawyer took a half step back, not because of the broom, because of the way 100,000 eyes focused through a tiny lens and decided to be a wall. I took the envelope from the seam and set the bones of the night on the station ledge. The side-by-side clause. The schedule that hid a command under sugar. The hotel invoice that smelled like 2 nights ago. The stream held its breath while I laid the verbs out like tools on a cloth. "We are done translating harm into perfume," I said. "If you like your version better, put it on your own page." The lawyer looked to Cashin for a rescue that did not arrive. Cashin did not perform anger because he finally understood that anger is a costume we put on too easily. He said one sentence, short and honored. "We rescind the clause. Both languages. Publish it tonight." The chat blossomed with disbelief and then with a kind of cautious joy that sounds like metal softening. Nor pinned the draft council had tried to keep in a room with fewer witnesses. Someone pasted a phone number for donations to the Night Shift Nurses Fund. The counter climbed into numbers only weather forecasters love. Vivian's avatar asked to join. Comments threw knives and bouquets in the same breath. I accepted because the room needed to hear a woman who is paid to own the mic decide what she owes herself when the light is unkind. Her square opened. No diamonds this time. Hair pulled back. Mouth bare. A face built to survive a white wall and a bad story. She said nothing at first. She just looked at the women in the chairs like she had finally found a frame she could not bully. Then she spoke in the soft voice brands use when they want to sound like they learned humility. "I am here to be quiet," she said. "Work. I will answer later. I will not steal it now." The mod team pinned a rule. No name calling. No purity tests. "We are busy." The nurse saw herself in the glass and forgot to apologize. The mother laughed and the room clapped for the sound. The girl in the blazer hummed 3 bars and went red for the right reason. A woman with oil under her nails walked in on her break, asked if we could fix the neck on a dress for a job interview in the morning, and left 10 minutes later with a straight seam and a mouth that belonged to her again. Rowan's second attempt to split the screen came with a digital bouquet and the word forgive typed like a dare. Declined. His third attempt was a real man, stepping into the shop with a production crew and lights they meant to sell me back my own glow. The broom did not move. The men did, backwards, fussing with dignity that had never been tested. The lawyer retreated to the sidewalk to make calls that sounded like winter acorns falling, all brittle and late. A siren passed and did not care about us. The junior assistant sorted chargers and unplugged fear from a power strip like a man who has decided to be useful to the right story. Nor messaged a link and the room trembled with potential. A mirror for the stream, off-platform, old school. The kind that keeps the light even when someone with a budget pulls a plug. We set it up between powder and scissors like a little altar to persistence. The chat pinned the mirror. The lawyer finally understood he was losing the hour and the rate and the myth. Cashin stepped closer, not to the lens, to the girl in the blazer who was shaking in a way that had nothing to do with makeup and everything to do with tomorrow. He held out a card but did not let it speak for him. "Tell me where to be," he said. She told him the address of a rehearsal space with a heater that works only when it wants to. He typed it into a phone face down. He did not perform the entry. He waited to be told twice, like a man learning not to assume. The bell rang again. A courier with a cardboard box the size of a small promise. Inside, donated foundation and brushes and a set of lip colors in shades that do not try to turn every woman into the same story. The note was signed by a makeup artist who had learned her trade in rooms that never trended. "For the night shift," it said. "For the women who work with their hands." I pressed the paper to my chest once and got back to it because gratitude is a verb. The counter did a thing I have only seen when storms approach. It leaped. It stuttered. It found a number that makes platforms panic. The screen flickered. The sound hiccuped. Noor's mirror held. The mod team pinned a message with 5 words and no emojis. "Hold the line. Keep breathing." I finished the 6th face. I set the brush down. I turned to the lens to translate one last small law before the night tried to cut the wires. A woman's body is not a pivot for a vote. If you do not know how to run a company without turning kisses into contracts, you do not know how to run a company. Heat rose under the door like a weather front. Tires hissed outside as if expensive cars were learning how to idle with shame. The lawyer re-entered with someone in a city jacket, the kind that opens doors and asks for signatures with a plastic smile. He held a paper like a weapon that thinks it is a prayer. He said my name like a sentence. Reina Solis. The chat howled and then went very, very quiet. Aunt Lila slid the broom from the jam and planted her feet. Cashin took a step he had not earned yesterday and stopped where my line begins. The junior assistant lifted the spare battery like a man presenting a sword that only cuts lies. The man in the jacket unfolded the paper with a practiced flick. He lifted his eyes to mine, and the stream, mirrored and stubborn, zoomed in on his mouth as it shaped the first word that would decide whether the night belonged to us or to the people who still believe a lens can own a woman. The man in the city jacket cleared his throat, and the stream leaned in as if sound could grow arms. He held the paper at the edge like it might bite. "Order to preserve records," he said. "Produce devices. Do not destroy. Appear at 9. He looked up at me, at the dress, at the women in the chairs who had put their faces back on without begging. "Bring the phone that filmed the river deck. Bring your backups." Aunt Lila's broom did not budge. Cashin said nothing, which was smarter than most men do when the room expects a speech. I signed the receipt because truth does not fear a clipboard. The man nodded once, a small human gesture inside his job, and left the paper on the counter as if it would warm itself. The chat fluttered, then steadied. Noor pinned a line. "We mirror. We archive. We walk in daylight. We did not end the stream. We saved it, wrapped it, set it on a shelf made of 1,000 little screens. We shut the door to the shop behind us and walked into a morning that had decided to be cold and clean. Cashin did not reach for my elbow. He matched my stride and learned the length. Voss Tower wore a hangover. The lobby smelled like lemon over fear. The elevator climbed with the hush of money, trying to remember its manners. On 48, the boardroom was already full of bad coffee and worse resolve. The chair wore patience like a rented coat. Legal stacked folders that hummed not yet. Theo sat loose in his seat with the calm of a man who trusted gravity to favor him. Vivian arrived in ironed gray, hair pulled back, mouth set to a shape that means strategy, not sorrow. We took the side wall, not the head, not the foot. That is where translators sit when rooms want to pretend words arrange themselves. I put 2 versions on the screen and made the verbs stand up. French on the left, where the law forces frankness. English on the right, where implication sells perfume. Any public act of affection counted as mutual consent. A gesture of unity signals stability. Images and broadcast as proof. No proof. Teeth. Perfume. The room listened because denial had become expensive. The chair cleared his throat and used the word context like a bandage. Legal spoke of thresholds and safety and noise. I read them back into human. You hit a switch inside a kiss and tried to flip it on a river. Theo smiled and stroked the table with his fingertips. He pitched his voice gentle, like weather from a radio. No one was going to use the clause, he said. We built it as a seatbelt for market panic. Retire it quietly and the city calms down. He let his gaze drift to me and rest like a hand on the back of a neck. You have had your moment. Do not set the building on fire to keep a camera warm. I translated the sentence only for my own spine. He meant kneel. Vivian did not perform sweetness now. She stared at the 2 columns and let her eyes go flat. This is not how we win, she said. We change the story and move on. She looked at me without blinking. I will handle the rest. Aiden's voice arrived like a straight line. We end it now, he said. We publish the end in both languages. We move my supervotes into a trust that requires worker pay and independent review before anything moves again. We refund any money used to buy rumor and call it sentiment. We open an audit the board does not control. Silence found chairs. The chair weighed panic against posterity and discovered his appetite was suddenly smaller. Legal asked for time and got 10 minutes. Theo put both elbows on the table and did the soft smile that has taught so many people to ignore the broken glass under it. You are doing this for applause, he told Aiden. The market punishes saints. He tipped his chin toward me. She will be gone by sunset. You will still be here with the numbers. I did not look at him. I looked at the worker rep by the back wall, the woman with a union button and hands that had cleaned other people's messes for a decade. She lifted her phone and tilted the screen. Noor's thread glowed. 2 columns, timestamps, invoices, a caption sharp enough to split marble. 1 version for the Mirror. 1 for the market. Pick. The chair called the vote the way tired men call last rounds. Hands rose. Some with grace. Some late. Some petrified by the cost of learning. The count carried. The clause died at 9:13 under fluorescent honesty. Legal shuffled paper. The stamp hit. The sound was small and correct. The room changed temperature by a degree. You could feel it in the carpet, a hum like a server learning a new hymn. Vivian stood so still the silk forgot to move. Theo's smile did not reach his eyes, which is to say it finally told the truth. Aiden signed the trust papers that caged his own power and set the key where he could not reach it without other hands. He did it without drama. The pen wrote a quiet sentence the city would remember. He looked at me after. Not for approval. For translation. Thank you for fixing the verb, I said. The junior assistant with brave eyes appeared with a stack of copies still warm from the machine. He made a lane between suits without asking permission and handed the first set to the worker rep, not to the chair. She slipped them into a folder already pregnant with grudges and smiled like a mother letting herself have one good bite before passing the plate. We left before anyone could thank me to death. The lobby guard lifted 2 fingers from his newspaper, a benediction disguised as habit. Outside, rain braided the air thin and silver. The courthouse sat 2 blocks east, a building that smells like old paper and people learning to choose the right door. That was where the order needed to be filed in ink someone could not delete at a panel. At the curb a black car slid up with the choreography of money. The rear door opened on gray silk and a ring that had learned to throw light like a weapon. Vivian stepped out, envelope in hand, smile like a cathedral. Temporary relief, she said. She held the paper so the press could photograph the stamp someone had hustled from a sleepy judge before breakfast. A hold on publication of certain files. An attempt to put my mouth in a crate until they staged their apology. You are late, I said. The internet already read. She tilted her head. The internet changes its mind after lunch, she said. You will tire. I do not. Theo circled the hood with a second envelope and a smirk polished to a sin. He stopped close enough that the rain beaded on his lashes. You wanted to run with grown people, he said, low and friendly. Here is the price. He flicked the flap open with a finger and let the top page breathe. My name lived in the header. The body was a chopped thread of messages that looked like I had pressed send on the leak. The date stamps were tweaked by an hour. The footer carried a shadow of a watermark that could fool a tired clerk. Attached, a tiny audio bite that sounded like my voice whispering yes, kiss him, into a river of static. The press microphones trembled as if hungry, then steadied like wolves trained to wait for a whistle. The first comment on Noor's thread changed color, then shape, then split into 100 little mouths eating doubt. The city is a fast study when a lie is easier to carry than a truth. Noor's message hit my phone like a small drum. Do not touch the audio. We can pull the shape of your consonants and prove the splice. Send raw headers now. Aiden looked at me, not with rescue, with a question he had earned the right to ask. What do you need? The courthouse door opened and a clerk peered out with a stamp poised like a weapon on the right side. She saw the envelopes, the rain, my face, the city holding its breath. She held the door an inch wider, a small act of grace that felt like architecture. I slid the phone to Noor. She already had the mirror of the stream, the invoices, the clause, the map of the lie. She sent back a short yes that could hold a bridge. Cashin shifted so the cameras would have to frame the worker rep if they wanted my face, which is the only useful thing a man in a suit can do in that moment. Vivian tilted her chin toward a lens that had never once betrayed her and offered a version of sympathy that could be cut into a commercial by noon. Theo slipped a hand into his pocket and touched something I could not see. A switch. A remote. A habit. Maybe all three. I took the warm set of court orders from the junior assistant who had sprinted them down from 48 like a relay runner. The paper smelled like rain and ink and a morning that refused to be edited. I stepped toward the threshold. The bailiff lifted a palm in a tired greeting that sounded like a lullaby for people who have learned to fight correctly. Behind me, the press took one step, a single animal learning a new trick. The worker rep said my name once, clean, like a bell calling a neighborhood to eat. I crossed the clean tile, handed the orders to the clerk, watched her stamp the space that turns effort into law. Outside, under the awning, a phone screen flared white. A new account with a kitchen table name posted a clip with my face and a mouth that sounded almost like mine. Yes, kiss him, it breathed. The counter climbed in ugly little leaps. Noor's next message hit my screen like a match to wet wood. I have the splice. 30 minutes to prove it. Hold the room. The clerk slid newer papers back across the rail. The stamp winked in the fluorescent light like a small star that prefers jobs to applause. The bailiff said my name again, softer, as if introducing me to the room where the next hour would either clean me or eat me. And from the corridor behind us, the sound of shoes we all knew found our backs. Vivian's cadence, precise. Theo's hush, smug. A third step I had learned at a rooftop, now slower and heavier, coming to stand where there is nowhere to hide. Rowan. He stopped just short of the metal detector, phone lifted, live red, smile bright. He turned the lens to me with the ease of a man who has never had to earn a breath. Say you lied, he said, voice too soft to be anything but dangerous. He did not need me to answer. The city would write a reply either way. I did not give him my throat. I turned to the clerk, to the pen, to the line where you sign when you are tired of watching other people write your story for you. The pen met paper. The stream mirrored. The lie kept climbing. And the loudest door in the building opened somewhere down the hall, the one judges use when they have decided to stop letting mornings be messy. The loud door opened and the judge walked in like a straight line through a messy poem. Robe black, eyes bright, posture that could press wrinkles from a lie at 20 paces. We rose. She sat. The room remembered how to behave. Counsel tried to speak first. The judge lifted one finger. No performances, she said. Names. I gave mine. The clerk wrote without looking up, pen steady as weather. The worker rep shifted closer. The junior assistant hovered at the rail with papers still warm, and Cashin stood beside me, not ahead, not behind, hands open where the room could read them. The judge looked at the two columns on the easel. French left, English right. She read the teeth, then the perfume. Her mouth tightened by 1 clean millimeter. She nodded to the clerk. Enter the rescission. Both languages. The stamp landed. A small thud that sounded like a door closing on a bad habit. Counsel for the other side stepped forward with an envelope that smelled like morning tricks. Emergency motion to restrain publication of false audio, he said, voice winter smooth. He lifted his chin toward me. We also ask that the court take custody of the device in her possession. The judge did not take the bait. We will decide what is false in daylight, she said. She turned to me. Do you have the phone? Yes, Your Honor, I said. I also have the raw headers and the first clip from the lobby. I raised the device. My hand stayed calm because Aunt Lila taught me where to put fear so it does not shake the tools. A side door opened and a court tech arrived with a case and the face of a man who likes machines more than drama. He took my phone with the care of someone handling an egg that might hatch proof. He plugged in a cable. Lines of code crawled. He watched the shape of sound like a doctor watches a beat. He nodded once, sharp, to himself. Noor's ping hit my screen on the clerk's desk. She had sent an affidavit and a chart that looked like a city map drawn by a patient god. Spectral mismatch. Noise floor wrong. Formant drift inconsistent with my mouth. She had tagged the splice. She had marked the cut points. She had pulled the time zone from the dirty tail of the file like a thread from a bad seam. The judge read. She tapped the page with her pen. Counsel, she said, if you wish to accuse, bring me something better than a teenager's edit. As to custody, she nodded at the tech, bag it, log it, return a certified copy to the owner within the hour. We are not in the business of stealing people's throats. Rowan stood at the back with his live light burning like a cheap fever. He smiled like a man who still believed the room loved him. The judge looked up. Sir, lower the device or I will have it sleep in a drawer, she said. He lowered it. His smile did not. Theo slipped forward with a soft voice and an apology that tried to put on a suit. This has gone far enough, he said. He cast his eyes toward the ceiling. For the health of the market, we should seal, settle, move on. I translated for the room that pretends not to speak men. He means gag, hide, forget. The judge did not bother to hide her boredom. Motion to seal denied. Motion to restrain denied. The public interest is not a toy, she said, and the sentence landed like rain on bad plans. Vivian stepped into the aisle with a face that had finally put down its knives. She folded her hands as if in prayer and chose her tone with surgical care. We regret, she said. We will support the audit. She looked at me. Her eyes finally told the truth. It was not guilt. It was respect for the work. The clerk returned my phone in a clear bag with a number that made it heavier than it looked. The tech produced a thumb drive and a slip. Certified copy. Chain documented. Do not drop it, his eyes said. I did not. The judge pushed her chair back an inch. One more, she said, looking over the rail. Mr. Ward. Cashin lifted his head. He did not sell anything with his voice. He kept it short. We end the clause that translates performance into consent. We publish the end in both languages. We place control behind a door that requires workers to hold the key. We will not buy rumor and call it strategy again. The judge nodded once. See that you remember this tone, she said. She stood. We were dismissed into air that had learned a new grammar. The hallway flooded us. Phones lifted and lowered. The worker rep pressed the warm copies to her ribcage like a second heart. The junior assistant slid the stamped packet into my hands, then steadied the edge with a thumb the way people do when they are handing over a baby and a future. He whispered thank you like a secret he was finally allowed to have. Rowan stepped in front of the metal detector with his camera up again, that bright coin of a smile back on his mouth. Say you edited the clip, he said softly. We will forgive you. We always forgive when the math demands it. I did not turn. I addressed the crowd because crowds fail when you tell them you are only speaking to one man. The audio is a fake, I said. The court has the proof. If you repost it now, you are choosing to lie. The city heard me because the city had run out of appetite for easy poison. Theo tried to salvage dignity from grammar. We wish Ms. Solis well, he announced to the assembled hunger. He pivoted to Cashin with the small smirk of a man who thinks he still owns the past. Drinks later. Cashin looked at his shoes and then at me. He lifted his phone, not toward a lens, toward contacts. He pressed one name and spoke low. Effective immediately, he said, you are out. He ended the call. He breathed. He did not look for applause. We stepped into rain that had decided to wash instead of show off. Under the awning, a reporter with gray at her temple lowered her mic. She did not ask for a statement. She folded her hands and let us pass. That is also translation. Aunt Lila's text pinged. Soup. Now. Her kitchen was a warm circle in a day that had made a profession of edges. She set bowls down like blessings. The junior assistant took one and ate like a person receiving permission. The worker rep declined and kissed my hair with the brisk affection of a union. Cashin did not touch his spoon until I lifted mine. You learn a man by the small things he obeys. We did not talk about love because love has poor ears when the room is still full of smoke. We talked about the audit list, the trust terms, who would sit in the cheap chairs while the expensive ones learned how to feel useful. Cashin wrote names in a small clean hand. He put a star by the worker rep. He put a circle by Noor. My phone lit on the far corner of the table. A new account with a kitchen table name, already flagged by Noor, already noisy, posted again. A still of me at the lectern, mouth open, eyes bright, captioned with a line that never left my body. I will kiss for the market. It galloped. 3,000. 9. 15. Noor's reply sat under it inside a minute. Spectrogram. Mismatch. Link. She pinned a loop that showed the splice seem like a scar under makeup. The post faltered. It tried to climb again and slipped. People who wanted to hate me kept one hand on the rail and the other on their own faces. Sometimes that is enough. Cashin washed the bowls with sleeves rolled past his wrists and the small silence of a man who understands that water and soap can be prayer when you have nothing good to say. He dried the spoons. He set them in their drawer without clatter. He did not ask if he could stay. He did not assume. I went to the window. Rain fingered the glass. The city breathed in a rhythm I could sing to without choking. Down on the street, a girl looked up from a bus stop, saw me through the reflection, and lifted her palm like a vow. I lifted mine back. 2 hands in the glass. That is the only language I trust after midnight. A knock landed on the door with courteous weight. Not a courier. Not a camera. The rap of a person who believes paper can still move a soul. Aunt Lila glanced at me. I opened. Vivian stood there with hair pulled back and a face that had stopped selling. She held no envelope. She held out her phone. On the screen, a calendar I knew too well. The rooftop. The courthouse. The river. Under tonight, a slot she had added. Women's Center. 6. No cameras. She looked at me and then at Aunt Lila and then at Cashin. I am coming with you, she said. I can call donors, not press. I can carry chairs. I will set coffee. Her voice had the careful honesty of a woman who has already swallowed the worst pride and kept her teeth. Aunt Lila stepped aside. She did not smile. She pointed at the sink. Start there. Vivian rolled her sleeves and obeyed. Water ran. The kettle started to hum. The room shifted. The city outside changed key. My phone buzzed one last time, the kind of buzz that writes itself on your skin. A private message with a single attachment. A video file name without a caption. I opened it because fear has had enough of my hours. The frame blinked awake on the rooftop from the first night, only from a different angle, higher, meaner. Rowan leaning into Cashin's ear. The words this time were clear. Bet her. If she says yes, you get the company. If she says no, I take it. The clock in the corner said what it said. The live counter ticked up in the tiny reflection of a phone I had not seen then. The camera panned left and caught a second face half reflected in glass. Theo. Watching. Laughing. My breath went cold. The room stilled. Cashin set a glass down very gently. He looked at the screen and then at the door. His mouth found one line that cost him and paid me. I will walk with you and show them this, he said. No microphones. No notes. Only names. We grabbed the folder. We grabbed the drive. We grabbed the broom because some rituals are holy. The rain had softened to a weather you could survive without rehearsals. We stepped into it. The street opened. And halfway to the corner, a black car rolled slow and sure, window sliding down, Rowan's smile inside it, winter bright. He raised both hands. Empty. Peace, he mouthed. The car door clicked. A palm opened. A key glinted on his skin, small and familiar, the exact cut that opens the door to a room the city still has not seen. The engine idled. The offer hung there like a trap that would rather be a bridge. And the day held its breath while I decided how to translate it. The key winked in Rowan's palm like a quiet sin that wanted to dress up as mercy. The street had that late afternoon hush when even sirens decide to breathe. I felt Aunt Lila's broom under my fingers, the weight of a small law. Cashin stood at my shoulder with his hands open, a man practicing honesty in public without applause. Rowan smiled the way winter smiles before it breaks a branch. Come on, Raina, he mouthed through the rain. Clean exit. No blood. He lifted the key higher, a glittering yes to a million wrongs. I did not take it. I let the broom rest against my leg and held up the folder instead, corners blunt from being useful. The paper made a sound the camera could not sell. He flinched, small, the way men do when something they never bothered to learn to fear finds their eyes. We walked. He rolled alongside like a salesman trying to remember the joke that used to work. Vivian stepped from our doorway with sleeves still damp from dishes and fell in beside me without breaking stride. She did not look at him. She looked at the women's center sign across the street where a volunteer taped a schedule to the glass with the careful love of people who never expect thanks. At the curb, Rowan reached again, this time with words instead of metal. You can have the building, the gear, the lights. I will fund your shop for a year. He spoke soft enough to pass for conscience. He meant leash. I took the key between two fingers like a thorn I intended to identify. Then I set it on the rim of a trash can and covered it with Aunt Lila's spare flyer, the one with bra sizes and rent hours and a phone number that answers. The city blinked. Rowan laughed without sound and closed the car door with a quiet that promised noise later. Inside the women's center, coffee steamed and chairs scraped a chorus. Noor propped her laptop on a crate and ran a session for anyone who wanted to know how to save a life from a lie with headers and timestamps. The worker rep set out sign in sheets without ceremony. The junior assistant with brave eyes hauled a folding table like he had been born to carry more than equipment. The nurse from the stream pressed a pack of crackers into my hand and told me to eat. I obeyed because wisdom does not need glitter. Cashin arrived with a box of cheap lamps and a stack of paper cups he had bought himself, wrong brand and the right instinct. He rolled them to the back without announcing his effort. Vivian called 2 donors who owed her and told them to send blankets, not cameras. They did. She stacked the blankets with the quiet of a person learning a new verb. We put the mirror from the shop against a wall that had never hosted anything pretty and let it tell the truth in bad light. Women sat. I worked. Liner that makes tired look like intention. Powder that lets sweat stay human. Pins that teach fabric to listen. The line reached the door and doubled back on itself like a river that remembers its source. The door swung. The judge came in without the robe and with a paper bag that held sandwiches and the authority of a person who does not need to be loud to fix a room. She nodded to me, to Cashin, to the broom by the chair, and set the bag by the coffee like an offering. The clerk followed with a clipboard and a pen and left them where anyone could borrow them. At 6, we broke for soup because Aunt Lila says you cannot build a revolution on fumes. She ladled with joy and swore at anyone who said they were not hungry. Even the camera-shy ate. Even the men who had come only to carry chairs ate. Cashin tried to help and got scolded for stacking bowls wrong. He laughed, the kind of sound that does not need an audience, and learned the right way on the second pass. Nor tugged my sleeve and showed me the thread where the splice had died under its own cowardice. The fake slipped. The apology did not arrive. That is fine. Not every wrong deserves the gift of our attention. We pinned the chart on a corkboard under the mirror and wrote a single line above it in thick marker. We remember. By 8, the trust papers were live in a place the board could not edit. The rumor tool lay under a signature that finally meant something. A maintenance worker from the tower stopped by on his way to a double shift, set a 50 on the table without naming it, and asked for a photo with the broom. We took it and did not post it. Near 9, the lobby guard wandered in with a bag of oranges he pretended he had found and a cassette player that still worked. He set music that had courage in it on a low shelf and left before anyone could clap. The room softened by a half-inch. You could feel it in the ankles of the women standing too long and in the shoulders of the men who had finally learned to sit. Late, the junior assistant stood by the door with a list. He read off names for rides and walked people to cars like a brother. Vivian swept the floor because someone had to. She did it badly at first and better by the second row. Cashin wiped tables without making it a symbol. He missed a ring stain and went back for it when Aunt Lila looked at him. These are the patterns that matter. Small, repeatable, visible in the worst light. Rowan did not return. Theo did not call. Their absence was a quiet that could be studied like a map. The city did what cities do when the spectacle runs out of pet tricks. It turned to rent and groceries and the ache behind the eyes. It left the door open for tomorrow. Near midnight, I stepped outside with the broom to shake the day off the bristles. The rain had become a mist that gets into your hair and refuses to leave. Across the street, the trash can still wore Aunt Lila's flyer as a crown. The key under it was a rumor now. I left it there because some objects deserve to learn they are not special. Cashin joined me without breaking the air. He did not touch my arm. He stood and watched the steam rise from the gutter. When he spoke, he kept it small. He said he had told the board he would take no salary until the audit paid every name it had ignored. He said he had fired the man who called harm strategy. He said he would keep his mouth out of rooms where women were finally speaking without asking permission. I listened. Then I told him to show up next week with paint for the center and a list of hands who would carry ladders without complaining. He nodded like a man who had spent a lifetime convincing doors to open and now understood the work was hinges and bolts. He left me with the line I could live with. I will be on time. Inside, the mirror and the soup and the pins made their own choir. Vivian packed blankets into labeled bins with the precision of a woman who has repurposed her obsession. Nor sat cross-legged on the floor and taught a teenager how to secure a backup. The worker rep organized sign-ups for the review board. The nurse dozed in a chair and looked like a person who had been allowed to be carried for 1 hour. I slipped into the back room and hung the red dress on a nail. The seam where the pocket had been opened lay clean, a sharp curve like a smile that knows where it belongs. I pressed my palm to the fabric and felt the echo of paper. I let my forehead rest against it for the count of 5. When I came back out, Aunt Lila had set the broom by the door again, bristles up, handle ready. She poured tea into a chipped cup and slid it to me across the counter with the same motion she uses to hand over a needle and a prayer. I drank. The heat went to all the cold places and told them a story they could stand to hear. We closed late. We counted the donations without announcing totals. We wrote thank you notes by hand and dropped them in a basket for morning stamps. We left the lights on over the mirror in case a woman needed to see herself on the way home and say yes to the face that got her through another night. On the walk back to Aunt Lila's, the city looked up from its screens and let me be the size I am without a debate. I passed the river. It did not ask for my mouth. I passed the tower. It kept its glass to itself. I passed the courthouse. The clean door sat with its weight like a good dog. At the corner, a girl in a school jacket tapped my sleeve and whispered thank you, then blushed as if she had stolen a jewel. I told her to keep it. In the kitchen, the kettle started singing the way it always does when the day remembers it still has time to correct itself. Aunt Lila put bread on a plate and a hand on my shoulder and did not say anything that would turn the moment into content. I went to the window. The city exhaled. Somewhere a bus sighed. Somewhere a saxophone practiced a scale it could already do in its sleep. My phone lay dark, finally, on the table. The folder sat on the chair, no longer heavy, just present. I thought about the rooftop and the courthouse and the river and the women's center and the broom. I thought about the key under the flyer, learning humility. I thought about the man who had tried to buy my throat and now had to learn to listen. When the kettle hissed, I poured, I sipped. I watched the steam write temporary messages on the glass. A language I trust. Here, then gone. True while it lasts. Enough to start again tomorrow.